From Washington, this is VOA News. Coming up, the latest on tensions in Ukraine. Iraqi leader on this week's parliamentary election. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Norman. Ukraine has restored the military draft to deal with increasingly violent pro-Russian separatists who seized buildings, that is, in about a dozen cities in Ukraine's Russian-speaking east. Interim President Oleksandr Turchynov signed the decree Thursday, just hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin demanded that Ukraine withdraw all military personnel from the troubled region near the Russian border. The Ukrainian draft targets 18 to 25 years old. The decree was signed a day after the Ukrainian leader said his government was helpless to quell the growing pro-Russian separatist movement in two eastern regions. An apparent car bomb killed at least 9 people Thursday on the outskirts of the Nigerian capital, Abuja. The blast was near the site of an April 14th bombing at a bus station that killed at least 75. The Islamic extremist group Boko Haram claimed responsibility for the April blast and promised more attacks. Nigeria is planning to host the World Economic Forum on Africa next week, and President Goodluck Jonathan has promised extraordinary measures to deal and security measures to deal with that meeting. Secretary of State John Kerry says the United States supports African-led efforts to combat the most deadly conflicts on the continent. He said Thursday during his visit to Addis Ababa that too many nations are at risk of descending into broad-based violence.
It is clear that the unspeakable violence in the Central African Republic, the deliberate killing of civilians on both sides in South Sudan, both of those underscore the urgency of the work that we have to do together.
Mr. Kerry visited the African Union's headquarters in the Ethiopian capital for talks with officials on the CAR, where Muslims continue to flee their homes, escaping attacks by Christian militia. Syrian opposition activists say government aircraft struck a busy market in a rebel-controlled district of Aleppo, killing at least 33 people. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Thursday's attack occurred in the Hilak area. The attack comes a day after a strike on an Aleppo school that left 18 dead. Many of them were children. Aleppo has been divided between government forces and rebels, with forces loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad carrying out frequent airstrikes and dropping barrel bombs in rebel-held areas. Iraqi election officials are counting ballots. They did so on Thursday after the country's first general election since U.S. troops withdrew in 2011.
هذا الذي حصل في الحقيقة أنا أعبر عنه بأنه صفعة بأكثر من وجه لا يحب.
Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki said the high level of participation was a slap in the face to terrorism and those who wanted to disrupt the polling. He also expressed confidence that his party would take the lead and called on others to join him in forming a ruling coalition. Final results from the election are not expected for at least 2 weeks. Election officials say about 60% of the country's 22 million eligible voters took part in Wednesday's poll. Cuba is objecting to its continued inclusion on the U.S. State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism. Cuban Foreign Ministry accused Washington of trying to justify its 54-year-old economic embargo against the island. Cuba has been on the U.S. terror list since 1982. The list also names Iran, Syria, and Sudan as countries that have repeatedly provided support for acts of international terrorism. A U.S. panel on religious freedom is asking the State Department to add 8 more countries to its list where severe violations of religious freedom are tolerated by their governments. In its annual report, the Commission on International Religious Freedom named Egypt, Iraq, Nigeria, Pakistan, Syria, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Vietnam as new countries of particular concern. The Commission also calls on the State Department to renew its status for 8 other countries where there has been no improvement. Those would be Burma, also known as Myanmar, China, Eritrea, Iran, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Uzbekistan. California jurors ended the day on Thursday without reaching a verdict and will continue deliberating in a legal fight between Apple and Samsung over smartphone technology. Apple is seeking $2.2 billion, Samsung $6 billion. They accuse one another of infringing on new phone technology. Get more at voanews.com.